Hey everyone, welcome to A Loop Through a Loop. I'm Tara. Thanks for coming to hang out with me today. We're going to talk about all the making going down in March. Spring has finally come. The flowers are on the trees. They're beautiful. If I have a picture of it, I'll pop it up here so then you can see what our entire street looks like. Our neighborhood is lined with these trees. I don't know the official name of them other than every time at this time of year, it's always my favorite when they bloom and blossom. Our youngest one is very convinced that those are her flowering trees, which is really cute. And yeah, sun's out longer. We're all a lot happier. Let's get on with the making. It is March 10th, I believe, and I'm going to do my first check-in for finished objects. A couple of days ago, I finally finished my relief wrap, and I went online because I just had this feeling like, what if I'm saying this name wrong for this pattern? And I think I was. Instead of bas relief wrap, I think it's bas relief wrap. So I apologize if I've been saying it wrong. So I modified this pattern from Purl Soho. It's free, and I knit this with the Purl Soho Cashmere Merino Bloom, and I got 4 skeins. They were gifted to me from Stephanie. So I began this project around the end of June 2021, and I got through the first 2 skeins of it pretty quickly. And then I had put it down because I didn't want to get burnt out on it. And I would do a couple rows here and there every once in a while. Here recently, I decided I kind of just really want to get this done and off the needle so that I can block it and wear it. I finished the 3rd skein in January, and I didn't work on the 4th and final skein of this project until the very last couple days of February, and then just kind of sat down and made myself do the rest of it. It's a bright cherry color in a time of year I really struggle with. We're coming to the end of winter, spring's almost here but not quite, and so every day of winter that hangs on, it really affects my mood, and I think that's the same for a lot of people. So having something that was bright and cheery was helpful, although to be completely honest, by the end of it, I don't want to say I was sick of this color, but I wasn't as in love with it as I was in the very beginning. And so I kind of wanted to make sure that I wasn't pushing myself to finish this and taking the joy out of it. I kind of just wanted to make sure I walked the line of finishing it and then still really loving it in the end. I think I did okay. This was knit on US size 6 needles as recommended in the pattern. I used my wooden interchangeable needles that I have from, I think they're Knitter's Pride. They're the first set and only set I ever had. And I really enjoyed doing it, doing all the work with the cables and the bobbles with those needles, because there is quite a bit of texture going on. So whenever I would need to cable or bobble, having that friction on the needle was really helpful, because I was afraid if I used a metal needle that maybe it would be just a little too slippery, and I kind of wanted the safety net of the friction of the wooden needle. When I did this, the techniques that I really focused on was knitting on one side of the work. So even though this was knit flat, what I would do is I would work the odd rows across like normal, and it was an even row, I would knit and purl backwards to get back to the other side. So all the cabling and bobbling happened on the odd rows, and all the even rows are you just knit the stitches as you see them. And I didn't want to turn my work over and over. So I would, kind of like a typewriter, I'd work my way across, ching, and go back. Which I've already known how to do, but I just wanted to build my stamina for doing it because I have plans to start the body of my cardigan after I get the second sleeve finished, and that's going to be a lot of back and forth. And I want to see, what does my tension do? Do I have the stamina to knit backwards over a long amount of stitches, or a project that could take longer? Kind of building up my technique that way. And then also, this was my practice, and I made myself cable without a cable needle at all. So this was done only with my size 6 knitting needles and no other tools or implements. In the center, there is, let me unfold this. So I do have one set of ends that I need to weave in. Everything else was woven in except those. I don't know why I forgot those. Pregnancy brain, we'll say. So there is an 8 or a 4x4 rib, or oh my god. There's an 8 stitch cable where you cross 4 in front. I thought, 8 stitches, that's a lot to do without, I just got kicked. That's a lot to do without a cable needle. And the first couple were tricky. And I was holding on to that yarn for my dear life. But this is quite long enough. I mean, if it would have been longer, I guess that would have been okay. But this is long enough that I got enough practice. You see, it just kind of keeps going. That was enough practicing for me. When I was done, I was so glad to be done with it. When I was working it, it still has the same texture. The density before and after blocking has changed, and so much as like the density of the fabric. The stitches have kind of, I don't want to say they've loosened up, but things have definitely relaxed, as they do with most blocking.
It's Mommy. What?
Oh, yep, there's Sam. Can you say hi?
Hi.
Yeah. So we're going to go have lunch. I just wanted to check in and say, yay, the relief wrap is finished, and on to the next project. It's halfway through March, and I have another check-in for you. One is going to be an update on my socks that I had made. I had got a hole, which I knew was going to happen because it's superwash merino. Merino's a fine fiber, and there's no nylon in here. But I did patch up the socks. What I ended up doing, since these are knit toe up, I picked up stitches and I knit a patch going up in pattern, and I connected the sides as I went, and then just kind of tried to sew down the top the best that I could. It's not perfect, but it would wear on the bottom of my foot. And then I decided, well, I'll just keep wearing them. And then on the second foot, I was hanging out with the kids, and I noticed that there's a hole in this heel. So this first patch took maybe, we'll say 20 minutes to do. So I know it wouldn't take long.
Mommy.
Hi, Claire. So I know that this wouldn't take that long to fix. I'm just trying to figure out the risk-reward ratio. Is it in the realm of actually being worth it? Or do I just forget it? The finished object that's brand new, that's Abby's sweater.
Abby's sweater.
Yes. Our kindergartner wanted a pink sweater.
Abby's sweater.
That has ice cream buttons.
Ice cream buttons.
Yeah, pretty.
Ice cream.
So she wanted a pink sweater. So I went and got some yarn and whipped up a sweater for her. All of my notes for the sweater I just did on 2 sticky notes, and I based off the main fabric design. Oh, thanks.
Welcome.
Do you want to put them on?
Okay, Yarn.
Okay, you put them on over here. Claire, do. I based on an old sweater of hers that I liked the design of, just to make it a little more interesting. And then all of the ribbing or bands are using seed stitch. I thought about doing garter, but then I thought, well, what could I do besides garter? And so I settled on seed stitch. I didn't want to do ribbing. This is an acrylic yarn, and I could have done ribbing and been okay, but I just wanted something a little different. She loves ice cream, so I found little ice cream buttons for her. The back, so my in-laws made this felt of her name for her when she was probably around a year old. And I've been holding on to it.
Abby sweater.
That says Abby. So I've been holding on to her name for several years now. I would give you more details.
Hi. Hi, Mommy.
But that's just not going to happen today. So here's the sweater. I made it up as I went. I took her measurements. I did all my notes on sticky notes. And so there we go. New day, fresh start, no interruptions. At least in this segment. The 6 and 4-year-old are at school. The 2-year-old is napping. I'm going to squeeze in just a couple of minutes to tell you about what I finished up today. Today is St. Patrick's Day, and I finished up my on-the-go knitting, which is a pair of socks, and I have them on. So bear with me. Here they are. These are the DRK Everyday socks. I used a US 1 needle and did 60 stitches, followed the pattern. I didn't make them quite as long. I have leftovers here. My plan is make baby socks with it because this is not enough for another grown-up pair of socks, or make a pair of socks for the girls. I haven't decided. It'll be socks for one of the kids, and then I don't know the content, the fiber content of this yarn, and I don't know a colorway or a brand. This was gifted to me, and so I've been slowly using it. So far I've gotten a pair of baby socks and these socks done, and I think there's enough here. I could probably knock out another pair of baby socks. Maybe these could be the socks that I wear when it's time to have baby boy. Take him to the hospital with me, and then he can wear these little socks home. We can be matching. For my toes and then around the cuff, I use the Stainless Garn Sisu yarn. What I've noticed is if I compare these two, the Sisu is a little more plump and round. I would say the twist on both of these is somewhat similar, but they're not exactly the same. This is definitely a plumper yarn, which I haven't decided if I want to use just this to make a pair of socks or just stick with this being a toe, a heel, or a cuff of a sock, because I had tried making a pair of socks with just this and it was a little hard on my hands at that gauge, so I haven't decided. This was lovely to work with. Loved it. They haven't been blocked. I cast them off, woven some ends, and then immediately put them on, and so here we are. Like I said, I followed everything to pattern. Around the cuff, I did do kind of a picot edging along the cuff, and it kind of, I don't know, it kind of makes me think of like a sunflower almost, kind of. At first I didn't know if I really liked it and I was going to take it out, but now that I have them done, I think it's just fine. The way that I worked it was I knit 2 rounds, then I did yarn over knit 2 together for 1 round, and then I knit a couple rounds afterward and then did a folded bind off. The result of that is, I guess I could take this off. Like I said, I haven't blocked it, so off my foot it looks kind of silly. But the result of that the way that I did the bind off makes the picots point down instead of pointing up, which was really, I think, what I wanted in the beginning. But I'm kind of okay with them pointing down, doing kind of a scallop. They kind of make me think of flowers. So this was my while I'm waiting knitting. I feel like right now life every day is a lot of hurry up and wait. Hurry up, get the kids dropped off somewhere, and then wait. And then hurry up and go pick them up and wait. And then hurry up and wait for the next thing. So my original DRK socks that I made that has the holes that are still in kind of a project purgatory, I guess. I called those on Ravelry while I was waiting. And these socks are while I was waiting again. So I don't have any projects on the go right now. I'm down to 2 projects on the needles. I do have one crochet project that I'm working on. This is my bag that I normally take with me. I leave it in the car, and it has some yarn in there to cast on a muscle burr, but I don't know if I want to cast it on right now. I really kind of want to soak in the feeling of only having 2 projects on my needles, and that's it. And just kind of taking my time to think about what do I want to make next, because there are a lot of ideas I keep waffling on back and forth, and if I'm waffling on that idea, then I know that I shouldn't cast it on just yet. So I'm going to give myself however much time I need to make my decision, and I'm going to enjoy these socks. I plan on wearing them exactly how I wore the other socks and see how they hold up, and then go from there. I am going to take a time out from knitting socks for just a little bit because I really want to get some progress made on my other projects. So right now, in this very moment, I don't have a desire to cast on anything new. I just really want to soak in what I'm already working on. But we'll see what happens in the next couple of weeks when it's the end of the month, if I stuck to that or not. So we'll see. My last finished object is a small one. It's a commissioned piece. A friend of a friend was wanting a baby bonnet for her daughter's doll. And so I said, I'll make it if she'll pay for it. So I quoted her a price for materials and my time, and she was okay with it. So I ended up making this little baby bonnet. It does fit, if you're my age, this does fit a Cabbage Patch doll. I think her daughter has a mini cane doll, something like that. I don't know what that is. I had to look it up. But I put some baubles on it. When I was going into this project, I had to think about what my investments were, not only with my time and materials, but then also long-term and short-term investments. I knew I wanted to be compensated for my time and yarn, but this took up so little yarn, I ended up not charging for the yarn. But I did charge for my time. Then I also had to think, when it comes to the construction, actually making the bonnet, I've never made one before, so I can't, it's not like when I made my daughter's sweater. I've made enough bottom-up sweaters that I have a basic recipe in my head. It's kind of like, when my mom cooks, she doesn't always pull out a recipe book. She's made some recipes so many times she just knows them, and so there are some patterns that I do know like that. This isn't one of them. I had to think, what kind of investment do I want to make? Do I want to try and find free bonnet patterns and then have to do a trial and error to figure out which ones I would want to keep and which ones I should have not downloaded? Or do I want to invest a little bit financially up front, and then that way I know I have a quality pattern that I can go to that's just reliable for me to use. So in the end, I ended up buying Petite Knit's baby doll book, I guess. It has different sweaters, it has a couple bonnets, it has 11 patterns, and I believe I paid $18 for it, which if you did the math, the cost per pattern was worth it. And if somebody in the future, whether recent or in the far future, asks for baby doll clothes, well, I know I have a collection of 11 patterns and I can say, well, here are the designs that you can choose from. And if you want, I can customize it to something different if you would like, but do know that will cost extra because that will take me a longer amount of time to do that for you. But having that collection of 11 patterns for me is really worth the investment in the long term. So while I didn't necessarily want to pay $18 because that seemed like a lot, but $18 for 11 patterns, that's pretty darn good. Now, all of those 11 patterns are in fingering weight, and this is a DK weight. This is Yarn Bees Must Be Merino in Blush, and I've used this before. I made a sweater for a test knit that never got published. I don't know what happened with that, but it was a beautiful sweater. I have a video on it. I know that this is going to be a yarn that's pretty easy to take care of. You just need to machine wash it on cold and gentle and lay flat to dry. I haven't blocked it, so I kind of have this little nub on the back here, but it's kind of cute when you put it on. This particular pattern with the baubles is not in the collection of doll patterns that I purchased. What I ended up doing was taking the gauge and the construction of the bonnets that are in there to come up with this. Now, this pattern is pretty simple. You start knitting the ribbing flat and you work all the baubles flat, and I did swatch for this. I have it right here. Since this was a DK weight and I was making a pattern, following a pattern that was intended for fingering weight, I needed to figure out my gauge and then do the math. When I did my gauge swatch and was doing all my knitting math, I did not charge for my time when I was doing that, because that was another long-term investment piece for me, because most of the baby yarn that I would buy to make something for a doll is probably going to be in an acrylic yarn, and Hobby Lobby's Baby Bee Sweet Delight has really been working out for me. I just really like it right now, but it's a DK weight. So if I could do the swatch, and I did this on size 4 needles, US 4 needles, that when I'm doing my swatch, what I'm doing is investing in knowledge that I would need in the future. When I go to make any piece that I want to, I can go ahead and I know her gauge for the patterns versus my gauge in my DK swatch, and I can do the math from there and figure it out just fine. Then I also wanted to play around with making baubles in different ways. So I started with this bottom row here are the baubles using the technique that I used in the bas relief wrap, because they come out so nice that I really like them. And then this top row, I thought, okay, I know there are so many different ways to make baubles. I kind of want to play around and see, is this bottom row of baubles, is that really the technique I want to go with? And ultimately it was. And that's probably one of the ways that I will continue to make them, because I like how well it turns out. Now it also turns out so nice and round and all, dare I say, almost perfect, because the tension that I have for my gauge allows the fabric to be tight enough that I get a really great shape. If I tried like a bigger needle and had a looser gauge, I don't know if the baubles would be as clean and crisp as they are in the swatch. So this was my swatch, and I did the yarn overs. So I have 4 yarn overs, so I know I used a US 4. This is acrylic yarn, so I didn't wet block this because I knew there wouldn't be any reason to. Nothing gonna happen to it when you wet block it. Acrylic is as acrylic does. That's why it's so indestructible. And I like using it for things for kids. Like, you don't have to be so precious with it. In fact, you can just be so precious with it that you use it all the time. That's how I got the baubles, and that's my swatch for the I-cord drawstring. They recommended like a 1/2 inch and then sewing it, like knitting stockinette for 1/2 inch and then sewing it down. And I'm wondering if that would work if I used fingering weight. But since this was DK, I went ahead and made it 1 inch because I just wasn't, I knew I could always take it out. I could always take it out. I wasn't, you know, I would rather be on the safe side. And it turned out that knitting the inch was a good call. You pick up stitches, knit for 1 inch, and then I just whip stitched it down and then pulled the I-cord through. Now, to pull the I-cord through the channel, I took an interlocking stitch marker and I put it through the end of my I-cord like so. And I used this stitch marker to guide my drawstring through the channel. Yeah. So now this is done. I told her I would pay for shipping since she's a friend of a friend, whatever. It turned out really cute. Like I said, if it's a Cabbage Patch doll, knowing that my husband has, I'll insert a picture of a Cabbage Patch doll that I tried it on. This is my husband's baby Joseph from when he was a little boy. And poor baby Joseph, his clothes are precious, but they are starting to fall apart. So I asked him if he would mind if I made baby Joseph a new outfit. I figured, well, I've got these patterns. I might as well go ahead and make like a sweater and pants for baby Joseph, you know. Time-wise, since I did charge for my time to make this, this particular bonnet that I made took about, including just constructing the entire bonnet. So not swatching and not doing the math, but just working on the bonnet probably took about 2.5 to 2 hours and 45 minutes, I would say. But I need to send that off. So that's all for finished objects. And so we'll move on to works in progress. I am pretty proud of myself for being able to get as many finished objects done this month as I did. It kind of came out of nowhere. Kind of surprised that my whips got down to, I have 3 active whips, and that just feels really good. Now, a couple days ago, I did get caught in already thinking about the next project after my cardigan is done because I realized I have my half wrap, which I'm not going to show. I did make progress on it. I'm probably, I don't know, 2/3 of the way through my second skein, and I just kind of pick it up just every once in a while when I feel like it. It's not something that I feel like, oh my gosh, I have to get it done right now. And there's something in the back of my head that is telling me that whenever our baby comes in May and I want to sit down and knit, a ginormous garter stitch square is probably more than enough to keep my brain satisfied. It's easy to put down and pick up again without losing your spot. So I'm not going to talk on about that, but I did make progress on that. And then the only other, well, I have 2 other whips to show. I guess I'll show you my newest one. Earlier, I talked about how I finished my socks and I didn't have an on-the-go project. Well, I decided to go ahead and cast on a muscle burra. I am using, this is Yarn Bee's authentic hand dyed. I don't know if they actually have, I don't know if they authentically hand dye it or if that's just what they call it. But this is in, I think it's Chestnut Embers. I think it's on Ravelry if you want to know the colorway. I've gotten started. This is on Addy circular 16-inch circulars because I just wanted to go around and around and around in a loop, and I wanted to try these to see, is a 16-inch fixed circular for this kind of pattern something I would really like better than my go-to magic loop. Because I found out with my socks, I tried to do the small circulars and I can't do small circulars with ribbing. It just is too hard on my hands, but I could do magic loop, no problem. Like, I really liked doing it on the magic loop. So I needed to find out for myself how I feel about working on this kind of project with the smaller 16-inch circulars. So far, I am enjoying it. You can tell I've kind of just started. I'm gonna use up all that I can of this chestnut color. And I thought this would be a good neutral that I could wear it, my husband could wear it, I could throw it on my son. I don't know that our oldest daughter would wear this because she is hardcore girl, like pink, unicorns, rainbow, all the bright fun colors. Going back to the needles, I did purchase these at our yarn shop here in town, Rebel Yarns, which I haven't been to since everything shut down. And I dropped off our son at preschool, so it was just me and our youngest, and I said, let's go to the yarn shop. And we had so much fun looking at all the colors, and she liked feeling everything. And so that was really nice. The only thing I walked out with were needles, so I was very good. I didn't buy any yarn, although there were a couple of things that I was like, oh, yes, that would be wonderful. But I was like, I can't do it. So anyway, this is the muscle burr. I'm knitting it on US 3. I'm doing the adult medium. So there's that whip. I got to put that back in the van. The last work in progress that I want to talk about is one that I am kind of designing on my own. I'm using Andrea Mowry's Ginny cardigan as kind of my construction recipe. That means it's going to be a raglan cardigan and kind of have the same silhouette and shape. The differences I'm making is I'm changing up the stitch pattern, and I'm knitting it bottom up instead of top down. And I'm knitting it that way because of the sleeves. So I showed this where I got my first sleeve done, and now I have my second sleeve done. Both sleeves are finished. My only goal for March was to finish the second sleeve and then work on the body during April. But when I finished the second sleeve, I thought, I kind of just don't want to stop. I have a good momentum going in that moment. And so I'm going to go ahead and cast on the body. And so I did. Now, so look how this is, I only have like half an inch left, and then I can connect the body and the sleeves together. I was working on it last night, but it was getting kind of late, and I thought, oh, I'm getting really tired. I probably should stop because I don't want to do something silly. You know, I should probably work on this during the day, maybe during nap time when I'm a little bit more awake. The sleeve motif is from my Japanese stitching Bible. I've mentioned that before, but I haven't told you about the stitch pattern on the body. These are what I'm calling my butterflies. So I have like what to me feels like bouquets of buds and flowers on the sleeves, and these are my little butterflies. This is the same pattern texture as Caitlin Hunter's Zweig sweater that's on the body after you get done with the color work and the lace and the yoke. She has a texture on the body, and that's where I got this idea from. It's also inspired by my grandmother's and my granddaughter, or my daughter. My grandmother had a framed picture of a crocheted butterfly that her mother had made, and it was in their bathroom my entire life. I remember my great-grandmother's butterfly, and it has a red fabric background. Like, it was just, I've been captivated by it my entire life. Well, there's a video that I have of our oldest daughter. She's probably 2.5, 3 or something like that. I'm showing her the butterfly, and I haven't told her anything about it, and she says, "Grandma's butterfly? Angel butterfly?"
Angel butterfly.
Angel butterfly. Whose
Grandma butterfly.
Grandma's butterfly. That's kind of my it's not kind of, it is my inspiration for this sweater. I wanted to use my favorite yarn. This is Rowan Alpaca Classic in soft satin. I would make scores of more sweaters in just this yarn. So I wanted something that reminded me of Angel Butterfly, something I could wear, and I'm right now 31 weeks pregnant. Wearing a pullover, while not unattainable, is not
desirable for me right now. A cardigan really is my go-to. If you want any other project details, it's all on Ravelry. And if you cannot access Ravelry, you can just ask me a question down in the comments and I'll answer. It's easier for me that way. That's my cardigan. I am really surprised that I'm about ready to connect the sleeves. That kind of blows my mind. I wasn't expecting that. That's everything as far as making. As we're coming to the end of March and starting April. April is Autism Awareness Month, and this is something, Autism Awareness Month is not necessarily new to me, but it has a new meaning for me this year. Earlier this year, our son was diagnosed with autism, and so we've started our journey on learning about how he can learn best and what works best for him, and that is different from our other kids. There have been a lot of ups and downs, trial and error, joy and heartache. Not heartache that he is autistic, but heartache that our world doesn't stop and see people first. And that's something I've been thinking about all throughout March. You know, our systems are failing us because I think we've lost sight of people first. It's been a blessing to have gone through this and to be learning and to remember that we should see people first as who they are. And so, yeah. So here's to a new journey, or really it's not a new journey, it's just continuing the journey we've already been on. If you have any questions about our experience so far, our son is 4, and like I said, he was diagnosed. He was diagnosed at the beginning of this year. So our journey so far has just been really, really short. But yeah, I just wanted to acknowledge and make people aware of how awesome little babies are that are different than us. And I think the different is good, and our world needs good different so that we can, I don't know, take care of each other better. I don't know where I'm going with this. I guess this is just my Midwestern way of saying goodbye. You know, a goodbye should be pretty short, but I've noticed coming from the Midwest, we always are like, well, which is the sign of, I know I should go, but is there anything else we need to talk about? So then your goodbye ends up stretching out longer and longer and longer than it really should. So sorry about that. That's everything. I'm going to end it there. That's everything for March. I will see you again in April, and we'll see how our making goes, what we've made. In the comments down below, tell me what projects you're working on. Some of you have been kind of keeping me updated every once in a while of a project that you've started and you've been working on. So I want to know what kind of progress you're making. And I'll chat with you down in the comments. Anything you want to talk about, let's just chat. I'll see you next time in April. Bye.